Welcome to another edition of the official Polandball podcast with your host, as always, nowadays, DickRhino. Vorsi is taking a break. And joining me for this week's podcast is somewhat of a well-known person both on Reddit and on YouTube for different reasons. ZimoNitrome. How do you want it pronounced?
It's actually ZimoNitrome. No, that's a funny deal about my internet persona that I don't think I even know how to pronounce my name properly.
Because
I kind of just...
this has been a thing, right? I've known you for like 10 years and I still do not know how your name is supposed to be pronounced.
I usually just give a different pronunciation each time to each person asking, so as to stir the pot a little bit.
So it's like the Joker in The Dark Knight with you want to know how I got these scars?
True, yeah, exactly. Just come up with a new origin story every time.
So, ZimoNitrome, glad to have you here on the podcast. For people out there who don't know, Zimo here has had a storied career both on YouTube and on Reddit. I went and checked, like your YouTube channel is actually older than your Reddit account. Your oldest YouTube videos are from like 15 or 16 years ago, something like that. And you've built up, quite the channel. You're up to 338,000 subscribers with 220 videos posted. That is not bad. That is not bad at all.
Thank you. It is over a long time. And I will say that my channel is a bit of a dead channel at the moment because I haven't posted in over 1 year. So it is the accumulation of all of those 15 years of being online. But it is a big hobby of mine. So
I have to say that I love, even though, yes, you're right, the latest thing you posted on YouTube was a year ago, but I love it. Your gangster rap video with Swedish kids cartoon character Mullemek. It is some of your best work ever. I know that it's difficult on YouTube when you branch out and try to do new stuff that's like sort of different in vibe from what your channel has done before, where it's how the YouTube algorithm works, where it promotes the stuff that it thinks your viewers want to see. So typically what they want to see from you is the sort of stuff you normally make. So when you try to make something different from what you normally make, the algorithm gets confused and it's like, oh, I don't know who to recommend this to. So it can be like it's sort of a thing that takes time. You can gradually over time shift your channel toward like a different thing. But if you just make one sort of content and then you just throw in like one video that's different, that video is typically not gonna get as many views, right?
No, that's correct. And I think maybe this is a good kind of segue, or somewhat of a segue into Reddit as well, because I think that's why I originally kind of started liking Reddit, because I saw that I could post my videos on Reddit, and every section of Reddit has a designated fan base, right? I posted a lot in like r/Minecraft, for example, when I started off, and r/montage parodies has been kind of my, where I got started and got the ball rolling.
That was a thing back then. People have sort of forgotten it, because meme culture, most of it is fleeting. Something is popular for a little while, and then people move on to the next meme, and then they move on to the next meme. And we've always talked about how Polandball is so special because it sort of survived that and just kept its charm for a very long time in internet time. It's like it goes wrong for a decade. But montage parodies was absolutely a thing that people did back then. And you did Mullemek stuff even back then with your how-to Mullemek videos.
Yeah, exactly. The result, or what am I gonna say? The contentan. How do you say that? the meaning of bringing up Reddit was to say that even if you try to shift your content on YouTube a bit, you can always find kind of somewhat of a niche on Reddit to post that to and still get some views and kind of get this ball rolling for any particular video that you would make, so that you could get a viewer base and kind of, you know, YouTube kind of figures out as well through its algorithm that, you know, oh, these viewers kind of view this video, so maybe I should recommend it to viewers that view videos like this a bit more. But yeah, sorry, we were talking about montage parodies.
So you kind
well.
of used Reddit as a promotion platform for your YouTube channel by like finding a specific subreddit with that niche and finding new viewers through posting there.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. And it's not just, you know, marketing 101. It was always things that I liked doing and, you know, subreddits that I like interacting with. So it wasn't just, you know, oh, I need to make the video that gets the most amount of views and post it to the subreddit that has the most amount of users. But that's definitely a strategy if you're like up and coming YouTuber, for example.
Yeah, dude, that is a whole conversation by itself. The whole thing of art versus, you know, making stuff that is commercially viable. How do you, I mean, I've talked to Aaron and Kolai about this as well. We're like, how do you reconcile those? Whereas like, say you do actually start getting the kind of views where you could conceivably start like making a living out of it. Then suddenly it's no longer just about the art, right? Now you also have to think about how to maximize your views and how to make sure that you earn enough so that you can make a living out of it. And then you might start being like, oh, I actually can't change the focus of my channel, even though I want to. I want to branch out. I want to do this. I want to do that. But I have to stick with the formula that works because now this is my living and I can't like risk jeopardizing my views by, you know, taking a different path with my content.
Yeah, definitely. And that is kind of a distinction that I've made on my YouTube channel. I've always just had it for fun, never to be designated to make money. I've always had, you know, ideas and thoughts of, you know, it would be fun if I could do this thing all the time and just drop out of school or drop out of my current work and just do this instead. But that's kind of how I structured my life a bit. I chose to go into more of a tech field instead of going into like liberal arts, for example.
Yeah.
Because I always had that kind of, you know, split of a path that I could take in my life. I could go into liberal arts and just do whatever I think is fun all the time. But I was always a bit scared that would, you know, when
what if you fail?
Yeah, kind of what if I fail. But I don't really have that thought. I think I am awesome and based and can do whatever. No, a little bit. But I always had the fear that if you make your hobby your work, then it's no longer your hobby in a way. You will not find it as entertaining or fulfilling for yourself to do.
Right.
And that is a little bit, I think, what has happened with YouTube a little bit sometimes. Because I often get a bit caught up in, you know, the views and the money, and there are so many metrics. And I think that contributes a little bit to me not thinking that it's as fun to make YouTube videos all the time. Because I usually do these things when I get bored, essentially. And I think like, oh, it would be so fun to make this meme. It would be so fun to like mash up these two things to make a cool video. For example. But when you start getting into the mind of, oh, I need to make another YouTube video because I need to make money, because I need to get views, because I need to get subscribers, that kind of takes it away a little bit for me, personally.
Like, I see that point. Counterpoint could be that, like, are you sure it's just not that you're scared of commitment? Because the way you're talking is like... I've seen it, like, similarly, people talk about, you know, getting into relationships and the whole thing of, like, you know, oh, I don't want to tie myself down. I don't want to be in, like, a serious long-term committed relationship because then it's, like, then it would be less fun. I don't know, just tying yourself to one person. And it's like, no, I wanna be free and I want to be out and just, like, pursue whatever. And in some cases, at least, that was probably the case for me for a long time, when I was, like, of that opinion. To some extent, it is a fear of commitment. And I lived my life in my youth in a sort of like, oh, I want to have as many doors open as I can. So if I commit to one door, that means I have to like close 5 other doors that are no longer options. And that feels bad, so I won't do that. But in the end result of that is you never step through any door at all. And you never really progress in your life. You're sort of just in the starting blocks of everything forever. So I'm just throwing it out there. It's like I hear what you're saying of like, oh, once you sort of like settle into it and it becomes a business, it's not just about passion and creativity. It becomes a job and then it's less fun. And I'm sure that is true to an extent. But do you think there could also be like sort of other factors at work?
No, I mean,
subconsciously.
There is definitely other factors. Like the choice I said about going into either tech or going into liberal arts, that is definitely one of those, I don't want to close doors, for examples. I think there's a bit of both currently, with me not making videos. But,
see, I had a similar thing. I was also like, obviously we're creative people because we draw comics, and I had that my entire life. I drew a lot of comics and stuff in just, you know, elementary school, and I started when I was in high school. Like I started LARPing, which is sort of like, you know, a theater thing, and I started playing music as well, like just electric guitar and whatever. And I've always had that itch of like, man, wouldn't it be cool if you could just make a living like doing creative stuff? But for me, it was sort of like my surroundings, like my friends and family who were like trying to talk me out of it, just because like they were scared that I was heading down a risky path that not a lot of people succeed with. And I felt the same way as you did, where I'm like, yeah, I know this line of work has like a 99% fail rate, but that's because 99% of the people who try to work, like make a living creatively, aren't that good at it. But it's like, but I have that confidence. I know that I am a very good comic artist. I know that I am a creative person. I know that I can make good content that people would want to take part of. So it's like, I wasn't afraid of failure, but other people were, and they talked me out of it. And like it's such a clear memory for me. It's like when I stopped playing the bass guitar, I was just sitting in my room at home practicing like I always did, several hours per day. And my brother came into my room, and I'm sure that he was well meant or something. But he just stood in the doorway, looked at me, and he asked, "So, what are you gonna do when you fail at this?"
Ouch.
Ouch. And that was the moment when it stopped being fun. And I just put it down and I never picked it back up again. I was like, they broke me. They absolutely did. So I did the sensible thing too. I became a lawyer. I went to law school. I was like, this is safe. This is good. This is low risk career-wise. But I've always had that in the back of my head of like, man, I should have gone for it. I should have become a singer. I should have become an actor. Like that's what's in my heart, right? Like we have a chance to do that now if this channel keeps on growing. Like it's absolutely could be like a realistic thing of turning it into a career. And part of me is like, even though I have a very good legal career now and I'm doing well for myself, part of me is like, man, you should just go for it.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask that. Is that kind of what you wish to do with this channel in one sense? Kind of get, an outlet for your creative talents and kind of just go for it, like you say?
I mean, that's definitely, at the same time, it's like, I'm not that guy anymore who was in his 20s and could just do whatever. It's like, I've built a life now around my current life. I have a wife, I have a daughter, right? With that comes responsibilities. Whereas like, if it was just me and I was living by myself, yeah, sure, quit my job, just take the plunge, jump off the side of the cliff and see what happens. Here it's like, she needs her shoes and I need to pay for her school and she needs her porridge in the morning. And it's like, I have another person I'm responsible for now and I can't just take whatever sort of gamble. So in a sense, it's like, definitely if we can make that work, we will. But I am not at a position where it's sensible for me to like quit my day job until this becomes like financially viable, if that makes sense.
Sounds like you're afraid of commitment. No, I'm sorry, but
you're not wrong.
I understand what you're saying, but I think everyone kind of rationalizes that in their own sense. Like when I was in high school, you know, you think you have a bunch of commitments then as well. Like this, whatever I choose now is going to be what I do for the rest of my entire life. So I think you always kind of have a way to rationalize going with the safer option a little bit.
Oh man, you're saying I'm doing the same thing you're doing. You know what? That's fine. That's fair. That's fair.
I'm sorry.
No.
It is funny. It sounds like you're describing me like, oh, I'm not a guy in his 20s who lives on his own, who has no commitments. You know?
Yeah.
But it is encouraging words as well. And I kind of wish I can do something, you know, do something big with my creative talents still. Maybe after saving up a bit of money, for example. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah. But now, the YouTube channel that you have has been dormant for a year or so, but you have been, you've still been active on Reddit. People don't know that. Like, a lot of people who know you on YouTube, because you do have a sizable channel with 338,000 subscribers, and you have a couple of videos, like meme videos, that have like, you know, several million views. 17 million, 8 million, 5 million, etc., etc. So there are a lot of people who have seen your content on YouTube and who probably don't know that you are also a very prolific Polandball comic artist and have been for over a decade. Yeah, for people who don't know this, in the Polandball subreddit, which is the home of Polandball comics, everyone else who like does Polandball stuff on the internet, be it YouTube or whatever, almost all of them just either they take their content from the subreddit, or they are also themselves participants in the subreddit and like post comics there. Like this is the hub. If you are on some Facebook page that posts Polandball comics, they're posted on Reddit first, and then they get spread out to the rest of the internet. And you have the #1 highest upvoted post of all time in the subreddit.
Yeah, I know.
So that is your claim to fame,
isn't it?
Huh?
Yeah, that, and I have beaten you at one point for the most contest wins as well. That was my first claim to fame on that subreddit.
That is true. That is true. Now, obviously, there is another person who has even more contest wins. But yes, there was a time when I was the one who had the most contest wins. But you did beat me for that one. No, that's fine.
Sorry to throw you under the bus like that.
No, that is fine. I mean, I took a hiatus for a couple of years, so I have no prestige when it comes to that. Whereas, like, I deserved to be overtaken by someone else. Can't be lazy. You gotta stay in the game.
No, that is true. And I've also seen, like, I think it's Nassau is the user who has the second most wins. They're climbing up there as well. So I've had to make 1 or 2 contest entries to, you know, just defend my title a little bit.
Oh, are you the current holder of the most contest wins?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I am.
Oh, yeah.
Still.
Because I thought it was Nassau, but I guess it's you. Yeah, because you won a couple. You took it back.
No, I don't think he ever passed me, did he? Or maybe I'm sleeping. Maybe
I think for a while Nassau had the most.
That cannot be true. That cannot be. I would have heard about this, I feel like.
Give me 1 sec and I will look this up. Here we go.
No, I have 12 wins at least. So maybe he has the most. Well,
he has 9 wins.
He has 9 wings. I have 12 wings, but you have to remember that you also get a pair of wings for getting the highest upvoted comics. So I think I have 11 of them from contest wins and 1 from having the highest upvoted comic. This is deep Polandball like technicalities we're getting into on the subreddit, but I think that's kind of why people love this community as well, because you have this these technicalities, so to speak.
Yeah. There's always something to obsess about for the people who are there. But yeah, you started making Polandball comics 11 years ago.
Around 2013, right?
Huh?
Around 2013, I think. Or 2014, 2013.
Your first comic posted was in August of 2013.
Yeah.
It was called New Sweden.
A long time ago. Yeah.
A long time ago. I am the moderator who gave you your posting rights in the subreddit.
I do remember that. I remember your pointers to me, and I was really happy to.
And I remember your approval request when it came in, because I was like, this looks like I drew this. And if you go back and look at that post, the top comment of your post 11 years ago was, I thought you were DickRhino for a second.
That is also very funny, because people might not know this, but there's sort of an inside joke about so many artists kind of emulating your art style that there was this meme that, you know, this guy is a DickRhino alt, and this guy is also a DickRhino alt.
Yeah. It's also that it's like the Seinfeld thing, right? There's a TV tropes page called Seinfeld Isn't Funny, where it's like when people go back now and watch Seinfeld, they're like, I don't get it. This is just like any comedy show. And it's like, yeah, but it wasn't back then. It's just they invented so many of those tropes that have just become like the norm now. That like back then it was groundbreaking, but
That's
now people just think it's like run of the mill kind of thing. Hence the meme of like people now say that Seinfeld isn't funny because you compare it to everything else that exists today.
That's really interesting. I feel like you find that in a lot of other medias as well. Like in music, you find people that like, what's the deal with Justice, for example, an artist?
Yeah.
It's like they just sound like any electronic music. Yeah, but they were like, they had this sound before, you know.
Yes.
It was introduced and became mainstream in a way.
Yeah. Or with pro wrestling and Alex Shelley developing the style that all of the other indie wrestlers have adopted. As like this is just what indie wrestling looks like now. What's so special about Alex Shelley? It was like, yeah, it's just he was 10 years before his time. Yeah, no, it's exactly that sort of thing. And I was one of the people to sort of like early on establish, I guess, what would you call like a trademark style. Where it's like very recognizable. But there were a couple of like really prolific Swedish posters back then. It was me, Sinnehiden. There was a guy called Feldgrau who made a bunch of comics back then as well, but he dropped off. And I think your initial style was sort of like an amalgamation of the styles of like the other Swedish posters, because I was very like influenced by Sinnehiden as well. I copied a lot of his stuff.
Yeah, maybe I should. It would be a good time to kind of go through how I think I got so interested in Polandball, because what I would do a long time ago is my first introduction to kind of just messing around in paint was making these fakimons. Are you familiar with this concept?
No.
It's like you just take sprites from Pokemon games and you kind of just match them and mash them up and like cut out this face of Charizard and put it on Gyarados or something like that. And then
wasn't there like a website where you could do that?
I mean, nowadays there is a website where they have pretty much taken every single Pokemon combination and people have contributed to this so that, you know, you can mash up anything and it's already a pre-made mashup. And probably you can probably do this with AI as well. But
yeah,
back in the days,
people. Of course, the joke is matching up Hitmonchan with Stantler.
Do you get a funny name? Oh, Hitler.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, but that's what I was doing when I was like 10 years old, kind of, on the internet, on like Swedish forums, and thought this was a super funny thing to do. And I found like some of these like old archives of what I've done, and it's fun to look through. But that's kind of, you know, how I got familiarized and got cozy working in MS Paint and really liked that art style of, you have these homogeneous areas of pixels. It is like pixel art, and Polandball is in a way kind of like pixel art, but it's
16-bit instead of 8-bit.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. And I think I just was drawn to that art style, and there was a lot of that art on, for example, 4chan and other underbellies of the internet, where people would draw in this sort of a similar art style to what you were doing and what these pixel arts looked like. So I think I was definitely 100% inspired by your art style, but I think this was an art style that was kind of getting traction a little bit on some obscure websites as well.
Yeah, because there were a couple of people who were like, just, I'm not gonna say like we're trying to bite my style, but definitely, me, Colai, Aaron, Brain for Breakfast as well. Whereas like we over time just figure out like a couple of different techniques for doing things. Couple of like just this is an easy way of drawing trees. This is a way of drawing clouds. This is a way of like how to draw USA's flag in an easy way on a country ball. And as those techniques sort of developed, we've made a bunch of like drawing tutorials as well that we put up on the Reddit wiki. And over time, that sort of just molded into sort of like standardized Polandball look, sort of like became established over time, where you can sort of identify, even though everyone has their own little thing and everyone has their own little quirks and ways of drawing, you did sort of like see a sort of formula to it develop. Which is something like we've tried to get away from that, or like discourage people from that. We're like, no, don't be formulaic. Like, develop your own style. That's way cooler. It doesn't have to look the same. There are core principles. It has to look like it was made in MS Paint and all of that. But I do wish people were a bit more creative in just their drawing techniques. And it's always fun to see someone show up who like really does develop their own identifiable style.
Yeah, 100%. I think that is one of the... People always complain about this, but I think that is the strength of the medium that has been defined on the Reddit, the subreddit, the Polandball subreddit of, countryballs and Polandballs.
Yeah.
Because there is sort of a strict tutorial that says, or people interpret it as strict. It has to look like MS Paint. You can't use advanced tools. Don't use, or it's discouraged, I would say, to use anti-aliasing, for example. And people see that as restrictive. But I think I love mediums where you are restricted, but you're still able to make so much with that restriction. You're still able to branch out and do a bunch of really quirky things with it. And you see people have different art styles. Like, there was the entire wave of people having really thick outlines on their balls. And you can do so much with backgrounds as well. You can have outlines or no outlines, and you can have no background, and you can have really detailed background, and you can almost be photorealistic, even though, not fully photorealistic. That's a no-no. Yeah. But there are so many different ways that people pronounce their art styles, I would say. And it's really interesting as well what you talked about, because I think you were one of the people who kind of introduced shadows in a way. Maybe people did it before, but I think your comics kind of, like you said, set a standard a little bit, and people started doing it a lot after your comics, I think.
Yeah,
you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think there were some other people as well, but I popularized some of that stuff. But that was absolutely the case of like a lot of the stuff that I did have now sort of become the norm, and some people get upset when people deviate from those norms. But back then, I was sort of pushing the boundaries, and I had some critics who were like, "Oh, you're taking the art style away from its roots too much. You're making it I got hit with that whole like, "Oh, you're making it look too good.
You're too detailed. It's not like 4chan anymore."
Exactly. It's supposed to be shittier and all of that. So, but that's always going to be the case. But I see that now with our, the YouTube channel's Discord server for whatever. Like, and it has its own fan base, which is different from Reddit's. So the people who are in the Polandball YouTube Discord are not the same people who are in the Reddit Polandball Discord. It's like two completely different audiences. and the YouTube kids who are a bit younger, they're like, they treat these rules sort of like almost like religion, right? Because all of these rules were created back before some of them were even born, but in some other cases, like way before they got on the internet. Yeah. So as far as they know, these rules and traditions and tropes and established practices, they have always existed. This has always been how Polandball is done. They can't like sort of envision like an era where things weren't like that. And when I did my stuff, like I pushed the boundaries. I broke rules, so to speak, which then became the new rules. So it's interesting because now I feel like I have a responsibility to push back against the rules that I established myself and be like, no, I want you to break the rules. I want you to redefine things. You're the next generation. I took Polandball to this level with my work together with the people from my era. Now I want to see the next generation of kids take that and like push the boundaries even higher and like explore this medium, like see what you can do. Sure, still within the reins of like a restricted medium that you have like the core rules to follow and whatever, but like take it to the next level. And they do. You can. This is these sort of generational shifts always raise the bar. Be it in music, be it in film, be it in any sort of entertainment. The next generation will always create cooler stuff than the previous generation did. It's like it's the nature of the beast. And if you look at like, we hold like art contests during like live streams where Kolai just reviews art made from people in our Discord community. And like some of the stuff that people draw there, like we're telling them, it's like, dude, create a Reddit account. Go post this in like the Polandball art subreddit. This is just mind-blowing stuff that they're making. But at the same time, we don't necessarily adhere strictly to the Reddit rules. So we're like, we don't enforce the subreddit rules for their art. So They can do some stuff that we can't do. They can use line tools. They can use advanced programs. They can use lighting effects and blur effects and I don't know, lens flares or whatever. But they do, and they create really, really cool, fascinating stuff. It's fun to see. But touching on you, I mean, you have sort of like been like that as well, not just on Reddit, but everything you said about how you can still find freedom and creativity even in a restricted medium, that's sort of like what you've done on YouTube as well. If you look at the montage parodies and also like the meme frog videos, right? I'm gonna say you took a single meme of the Wednesday frog, and I'm gonna say that you pushed that pretty much as far creatively as it's possible to push a meme.
Yeah, maybe. That's always a thing I feel I have had as a niche or something. That, just take an up-and-coming meme and just put it in video form in general. That's like a cheat code that I've been doing.
Okay, but
usually worked out. Yeah, sorry.
It's still just one meme. It's still just you post the Wednesday frog on Wednesdays. And how do you keep that interesting for an entire year or something? And some of your meme frog videos are pretty goddamn out there. It's like, how do you come up with some of that stuff?
It is a really good question. And when I did that was for 1 year. I think that was like 2018, 2019. That's a long time ago now. And I don't know, I feel like that also kind of took a toll on my YouTube creativity a bit, because it was fun, but it was also not fun.
Did it start feeling like a chore?
It started feeling like a chore, definitely. And I did that while in university as well. So it was not just me having free time. It would go many weeks where I would go like 5 days just coming up with an idea, and then 2 days just sitting in my room doing nothing but editing together a video to get it out during these like 7 days. But I don't know, I feel like I've always had a good sense of creativity. I draw from so many mediums or medias, I would say, like shows and art and comics and everything that I consume, and kind of just try to find different tropes and put this frog in those different tropes. There are so many things. Like if you think back, for example, on Polandball, the Polandball subreddit where we have contests. I feel like that's also like you have to come up with something interesting and creative every month in a way, you guys, for people to draw. And you can kind of, envision these different tropes. Like there's like medieval Europe, for example. There's space. You can be underwater. You can be on a volcano. These are sort of, just things that are established tropes a little bit that you can draw from to, apply to your mediums to make them a bit more interesting. And I think I've always been drawn a little bit to, RPG-esque themes, where you're, adventure games and so forth. And you often find different environments and different biomes in games like this or in shows that I know. Even though I say I'm creative, it sounds like I'm just drawing from these kind of established tropes a little bit. But I think that is what being creative is a little bit. You take things that people have done before and you mash them up and jumble them together in a different context, and it often comes off as if you're a creative genius.
No, I think that's fair. I think that's how most creative stuff works. Whereas like we're not all just reinventing the wheel for ourselves and just starting from zero. It's it's like that old saying, like I was able to reach as far as I could because I was standing on the backs of giants. Where everyone, of course, takes inspiration from the things that came before. Everyone and I think it's fine to sort of like acknowledge that, and it shouldn't be sort of stigmatized or shameful to sort of like admit that, like, yeah, of course I do that too. Whereas like I look at another comic and I see like, oh, look at the way they drew that cloud, and then I look at it a bit because that looks really good, and then I look at it a bit closer and I see like, oh, okay, that's how they did it. I see what they did now. I'm totally gonna steal that. That's how I'm gonna draw clouds from now on. Of course you do that. Everyone does that.
And we also live in our, we live in the context of society as well. If you were to make something that is super duper out there and super duper new and creative, I would say, it's not always appreciated either. You kind of have to put it in a context that people will appreciate to some extent, like tropes and things that they kind of recognize a little bit. And I feel like this is the sense, or this is how it works with a bunch of different fields as well, like fashion, for example. You want things that aren't too super duper crazy. You want things that are a little bit similar but still new in some little twist or some little way.
Yeah, if you compare it like over a period of like 30 years, like fashion in the 70s compared to like fashion in the 2000s, it's a night and day. But that change was gradual. It was like piece by piece. It didn't just happen overnight.
Yeah.
That's absolutely the case, where like you sort of have to stick within the confines of your community, in a sense, of just being accepted. That's interesting. That's sort of deep, because that's sort of like how society works at large as well, right? You're allowed to buck the trends a little bit. You're allowed to stand out from the crowd a little bit, but not too much.
And I feel like that's really cultural as well. I think there's different context.
That's a Swedish thing.
That is
a real Swedish thing.
Because it's like really different to like... You get different reactions to stand out in Swedish society, I would say, as to compared to, for example, American society. Because there's a thing of, the American dream, for example, or, standing out and being, overcoming all your obstacles.
Yeah, exactly. Individualism as a concept.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's not It depends a little bit. I feel like I see that a lot in Stockholm a bit more than you see in different cities in Sweden.
Too, yeah.
But generally there's, Jantelagen, if people are familiar with that or not. Probably not, our international
Jantelagen
audience.
is a Swedish thing. The closest, it's not an exact translation, but there is something in English which is called crab bucket mentality. It's not exactly the same, but crab bucket mentality means that like if you have a bucket full of crabs, if one crab tries to escape, the other crabs will pull it back down. There's also another thing called I think it's called tall poppy syndrome or something, where it's like if you have a field of flowers and one flower sticks up above the other ones, then it gets caught in the wind and gets blown off and broken and whatever, and it sort of meshes in a bit with Jantelagen, which is a Swedish and Norwegian proverb about how you are supposed to be, your role in society, how you fit in society. And you are not supposed to stand out. You are not supposed to ever think you are better than anyone else. You're not supposed to ever think you know more than anyone else. You're not supposed to think that you are more qualified than anyone else. So it's so ingrained in our mentality. Every Swede learns this by heart as just a way to be. So my wife, for example,
you don't learn it explicitly. I would say it is very implicit. All of this.
Yes, it just gets spread. It's like the Pledge of Allegiance in the U.S. that all the kids have to recite every morning to get brainwashed, and they're like, oh, it's voluntary, you don't have to do it, but we all know you have to do it. We all know that you get bullied if you don't, because it's what's expected of you on a societal level. But it's sort of like the same with Jantelagen. It's just taught by all facets of society. It gets hammered into you from every direction. And my wife, who's a project leader, she works for like an international company that's like, it's got its headquarters in the US. So she has a lot of like just meetings with people from different countries, and a lot of like, oh, here's the Swedish team, here is the American team, here is the blah 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 team, here is the UK team or whatever. So she does get to see these different group dynamics of how people act depending on like where they're from. And she also has a different cultural context herself. You know, she comes from Austria, and she moved here to Sweden a couple of years ago to be with me. So she's worked in like German and Austrian teams as well. And she's like, she absolutely sees how Swedes are with the whole Jante thing, and everyone is so polite and everyone's so self-deprecating. Whenever anyone has an achievement, their first instinct is to downplay it, right? If you've done something cool at work, and you know you've done something cool, you know that like, this was you, this is really all on you. When there is that meeting, when we're gonna talk about the thing you did, every Swede is instinctively, when it's their turn to talk, they're just gonna say, guys, this was a group project. Guys, this was a group effort.
I'm so happy we accomplished this.
Exactly. This wasn't me. This was all of us. We did this. So she sees that like, yep, that's how Swedes are. But she's like, you know what? I don't hate it.
No, I mean, there is a lot of negative things to be said about Jantelagen, and I think it does hold back a lot of people a lot of times. But there is also some virtue in being humble, of course. So, I mean, double-edged sword, but I feel like a lot of people are a bit hurt by it.
Maybe. I mean, we have our famous soccer star, Zlatan.
Yeah.
He got very criticized a long time in Sweden because he refused to follow Jantelagen. Just absolutely refused.
Yeah, you have quotes of him saying like, I know I am the best.
Yeah, he's like, I know I am the best, and I'm not gonna pretend like I'm not. And he got just accused of being a bad Swede, basically. Whereas like the way you act might be how Italians act, or how Americans act, or how Spanish people act, or whatever. But this is not how Swedes act. Even though you are the best, And even though you know you're the best, and even though we know you're the best, you're not supposed to say it.
Yeah, it is probably somewhat of a positive rule to build a tight-knit community in one way. I mean, it does probably form some cohesion, but, you know, like I said, double-edged sword.
Yeah, but when it comes to, I mean, do you think Polandball is sort of like is our way of spreading that to the rest of the world? Because that's how this medium works too, right? Where you're like, you're supposed to stick within the constraints of the medium. You're supposed to like not stick out too much or too far. You can't just flip the rules upside down. There is still this expectation of like, these are the rules, these are the traditions, these are the established practices that everyone has agreed to follow. If you want to be part of this very inclusive community, you have to sort of just follow be a part of the culture, so to speak.
Is that what you're saying? Is that like Swedes are good at this because we already live in a restrictive society?
Well, it's chicken or the egg. Is it that we're good at it because that's how we were brought up? Or is it that we have influenced Polandball into becoming this thing? Because Swedes have had like a lot of like, for the size of our country, we've had a lot of influence on the medium of Polandball as it is.
Yeah, I think maybe it's just, you know, Swedes being online a lot, and you see a lot of Swedes online, or at least, you know, during 2010, for example. I feel like there was an overrepresentation sometimes of Swedish people, at least on Reddit, and I think r/Sweden was one of the biggest subreddits on Reddit for a while, or like, you know, related to a single country.
I'm gonna go on the hugest tangent right now, the biggest tangent.
I love tangents, so
okay, I'm sorry, but I have to. So, all of the Americans out there who are like, ooh, capitalism good, ooh, socialism bad, ooh, big government bad, no big government project has ever amounted to anything, we shouldn't have any government and it should just be the markets doing things by themselves, boo, boo, ba, ba. It's like, I was so like that growing up. I was super like that. But then there's just been a couple of things that have happened in my life that has forced me to reevaluate some of my positions, where I've just looked at things in practice and realized that, like, I was not as immune to propaganda myself as I thought I was. I was like, I've just been accepting some things uncritically that I shouldn't have been, and maybe the truth is a bit more closer to the middle and not the extremes. Because we had a thing in Sweden, a government campaign. There was like big TV commercials. You might be old enough to remember it. The campaign was called Bredband för alle.
I do not remember this, I'm sorry.
Gotcha. Because this was a huge government project that we undertook in like the early 2000s. Big government, big socialism, big project, where it's like, we are going to build out like fiber broadband to every single fucking household in all of Sweden. Which, massive government project.
It
cost billions and billions of dollars, right? It was like huge. But they did it. And every single household in Sweden got like high-speed internet. During a time when Sweden was the only goddamn country in the world who had done anything like this. The result of that was what is known as the Swedish IT boom. Of Sweden just becoming a market leader in tech, and was for many, many years. We were ahead of the curve of everyone. We were sitting at home with like fiber internet for just Joe Schmo out in the outbacks, while tech people in the US still had to use like DSL connections.
I will jump in to just tell an annoying anecdote. Because
sure.
I do remember a lot about, I kind of know about this incentive, but probably not by name a little bit. Because I do remember that when I I grew up in a suburb, the inner city had high-speed internet. And my friends out in the countryside, they also had high-speed internet. But the suburb kind of got, stuck Shafted. In between a little bit. They didn't get like what do you call it? They didn't get subsidies to speed it up, and they weren't relevant enough to, be the city center that got it. So it took me so long to get high-speed internet. I even moved out to the inner city, and I was super unfortunate that my landlord was the only house in the entire 1 kilometer radius that didn't have high-speed internet because he was so stingy. But I eventually got it. But it took me until I turned 21, I think, until I got high-speed internet, which is super crazy.
Man, that is rough.
But most people had it in Sweden. That I can agree with. I was just one of the unfortunate ones who didn't.
Yeah, no, most people had it, and it's it is such a success story. And look at what it did for the markets. Look at what it did for Sweden's place in the world as an IT leader. Look at the residual effects today. All of these Swedish video game developers, and also just tech and programming and development in general. Now the rest of the world has caught up, but it took a long time. For a long time, Sweden just sitting there as this tiny little country up in the north, just being one of the tech and IT giants for some reason. And that was because of big, dumb, stupid socialist government program, which turned out to be real fucking smart and real fucking successful and made all of us richer in the end.
And I think we are a bit of a product of that as well, because I think so many Swedes have kind of had a reputation for being culturally aware of internet culture, I would say.
Yes.
And I think that, we are a product of that as well. What we do with Polandball, for example, or YouTube. That we have had a lot of prerequisites of knowing very early internet memes.
Well, if you look at the Nordic countries and the different stereotypes that are of this is the stereotype for Danish people, this is the stereotype for Norwegian people, this is the stereotype for Finnish people, etc. Sweden in general and Stockholm in particular, it's partly the metrosexual thing, sure, and a bit more effeminate than the other ones, but also that we're trend chasers. Absolutely, where it comes to fashion and in a sense, it's internet memes or whatever, where Swedes always want to be super modern. We always want to be super up to date. We, Italy is number one in fashion, right? Whenever there's a new trend, it starts in Milan or other parts of Italy first. Then it moves on to France. And then it moves on to Sweden. We're typically number 3 on the list. So we're still one of the early adopters of new fashion trends. And if you look at other countries, if you look at Denmark, for example, they dress like we dressed 5 years ago. If you look at USA, they dress like we dressed 10 years ago. I worked in the fashion industry for a long time before I became a lawyer, and I've noticed.
Really?
Yeah, I worked retail, but I got super into it. I got super into it and educated myself and ask me about different wool fabrics and I'll tell you thread counts and what they mean for how a suit drapes or whatever. No, I was so into it that I was watching runway shows back then to figure out okay, what's gonna be next year's trend.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. My sister is also she's also in the fashion industry, I would say. So she knows a lot about all those things you mentioned as well. But I also want to add that that is one thing that I feel like a lot of foreigners say when they come visit Sweden, that they notice that, everyone is really stylish. Everyone knows how to dress well. Everyone, is kind of up to date with the fashion. At least when they go to Stockholm, I would say. But probably a lot of different places in Sweden as well.
Aaron recently came and visited me here in Stockholm. That was the first thing he said as well. He's like, everyone is so well dressed. I feel like such a slob just walking down the street. No, that is a thing. But yeah, it applies to all aspects of Swedish society. So we're trend chasers. We want to stay modern. We want to stay hip. We follow the latest trends in music.
Yeah, that is interesting as well. Do you know one of my favorite bands throughout the past 3 years has been 100 Gex? Do you know what those
I've
guys?
heard the name, but I haven't paid attention.
No, but it's pretty progressive hyper pop music. But it's
cool.
funny. They had I saw a video, a music video or an interview or something, and people say that I have never met a Swedish person, but this is what I imagine them being like. And I would say that, they have been kind of, they've been pushing a movement. If you're not up with hyperpop as a genre, it's kind of been taking over electronic or like, I would say really trendy and progressive music, I would say. But it's just interesting that when people see people like that, they imagine that, I thought these people were Swedish because they seem modern and up to date and, with it, so to speak.
Now, obviously, we're just sitting here and like glazing Sweden, but folks, that's what you get when you have two Swedes who are doing a podcast together. And I feel like obviously in Polandball comics, I'm one of the people who like have shit on Sweden the hardest. I love making Sweden like the butt of the joke in my comics. I have really like sort of pushed the envelope when it comes to the whole gay Sweden thing, or because it's fun, but at the same time, it's like at the end of the day, I do really love this country. I do.
Yeah, but I feel like that's a very interesting. I think it would be fun to talk a bit about our comics, because I feel like a lot of people, a lot of people who likes to make Polandball content online in general, not speaking about just Reddit, they are very staunch nationalists, I would say. And even, I'm not sure, like when I read some of your comics, when I was like 13 years old or whatever, I saw some of them as being, kind of promoting Sweden a little bit.
Oh, really?
I think like, but maybe that's just me misremembering things. Because you have made a comic, for example, that's like Sweden is best today, right?
Yes.
And that kind of promotes Sweden, but the butt of the joke is that Sweden is like we're doing now. He's like just glazing himself, and he's like put in a silent cell at the end of it. But that's a really interesting topic, I feel like, because there are a lot of people who just kind of make comics with the sole purpose of glorifying their own country, but usually
only making fun of other countries,
that's true as well. But I feel like those comics, you kind of realize quickly that that's not very fun.
No.
And that's kind of a realization I came with as well. I want to say that, like, before I started making Polandball comics, I had a bit more of a nationalist like vein in my body than I have currently. Not really like I was never like weird about it or anything.
Chicken Scuttle Monkey has talked about the same thing, how he was like super nationalistic before he found Polandball and don't mess with Texas. That was like his big thing. And Polandball sort of like, he said that, I'm sure it's even more pronounced for an American, because they're raised in a society that they're taught about American exceptionalism at school, and it's like, oh, we're so special, we're so much better, we're best place in the world or whatever. And he said that Polandball for him was something that like helped to sort of like deprogram him and like break through the brainwashing and see things from like different perspectives that he hadn't considered before.
No, definitely. It is very funny because people often describe Polandball comics as being racist, for example. But I think it's had definitely the opposite effect on me. I've become super interested in different cultures and, super interested in history as well. I hated history and geographics and everything like that in school. But when you put it in this like super simple format, when you reduce everything to a dumb joke, that is a really good starting point to, researching a bunch of these events and countries on your own and realizing that, everything is super multifaceted usually. And it isn't as black and white as you usually think at first glance.
Man, we got a beautiful mail sent to us a couple of days ago. I just have to share it, or like the sentiment of it, where it was like a mother who wrote to us. And we've seen testimonials like this in the subreddit as well. But there was a mother who wrote to us and is like, "Hi, do you guys have like any merch that you sell? Because I have a daughter who is like, she found your channel and it has sparked an interest in like history and culture and politics in her that she's never had before, and now that's all she talks about, and now she just, you know, sits and watches our live stream and wants to participate in contests and draw stuff and join the community. And she's like, this has become like such a huge deal for her that I want to like continue her on this path and whatever. So it's like, we just got that question of like, do you have merch that I can buy for my kid that's Polandball related, so that I can like just continue to encourage this thing, which is like, we don't have that yet. We're in the planning stages of doing that, and we definitely want that. But it's like hearing things like that, and just seeing how these stupid meme comics that we make have like such a profound effect on the world. And like, there's so many people I've talked to who are like, yeah, hey, guess what? Back in the day, there wasn't really like a big place for flag nerds or like geography nerds, and so many people through Polandball have said that like, I've found the first sort of place that I feel like I belong to, like a community that feels like it is for me.
Yeah.
And you know, when I found the subreddit, it had like less than like 5,000 subscribers or something, and you also came along like very early. It was not a big thing.
10,000 or like a couple of 10,000s.
Yeah, and just to see that we built up a thing that has like become like a very important part of the lives of millions of people. It's sort of humbling when you think about it. I don't do it all that often, but when you do stop and think about it, it's like, I sometimes think that like maybe Polandball, it sounds so stupid in a way when you say it, but I was like, maybe Polandball is the most important thing I will do in my life.
Yeah, it does sound a bit silly when you say it, but also not. it is super interesting, because there's also the distinction of, I would say that the people on the subreddit, they're kind of doing charity work a little bit, because Polandball is a phenomenon that was not originally on Reddit. It has spread throughout, you know, so many different sites. It's on Instagram and DeviantArt. There are communities everywhere. But the sole majority of original content still comes from this one subreddit. Yeah. And whatever you do on there, it will get spread, and it will contribute to the medium, and people will get impacted by it.
It's a crowd-funded global education effort.
Yeah, it is super interesting, and I've been thinking about it a bit as well. I feel like I don't have autism, but I have autistic traits sometimes, I feel like. And I feel like Polandball is sort of the perfect rabbit hole to go down if you kind of, you know, as your special autistic interest in a way, that it is super easy to obsess with. And it is, in many ways, drawing comics, it's not like, you don't get much benefit from it in many ways, other than, you know, expressing yourself, and you're being a part of a community, and you're getting comments, and you're being interested, you know.
But it is art for its own sake. Yeah,
it is art for its own sake. Most people don't earn money from it. I mean, you guys do a little bit, but I never did. But I just do it because I think it's fun. It's like,
I did it for 10 years without earning a dime.
All of us have done it before because it's fun. But I have realized myself, and I do think a lot of people also realize that at some point, like, a lot of this time is better spent doing other things if you want to be productive, like studying or trying to earn money in some way. But you probably shouldn't look at it that way. I mean, it is a thing you do. If you do a thing just because it's a hobby and you like it, like, you don't need much more in many ways.
I mean, if you touch back at what I said earlier about part of me has always wanted to, like, just be able to put all my time into creative stuff if I could. For me, Polandball was a form of escapism. I found Polandball while I was in law school. And for me, drawing Polandball comics was my way of staying sane.
Right. Because of like overwhelming schoolwork, or
yeah, and just such a grown-up thing, right? Going to law school, and it's so. Don't get me wrong, I love my job and I'm good at it, but there are aspects of the law that can be real goddamn boring, like really boring. And law school is tough, and it's all. Now I'm doing sensible choices for my future. I am doing the correct thing, blah de blah de blah. But I had to go on my free time and draw comics just to feel alive and just sort of connect with myself and like that part of me where I was like, I can't let the creative side of me die just because I chose this path in life. I need to have a creative outlet in my life.
No, but I feel like it's also very therapeutic in a way to just in the comic making process, because you can just like play some music on Spotify or YouTube, or just sit in silence as well and just kind of draw. And in
you don't have to think about taxes or homework.
No, but and you kind of feel in a way that you're creating something, and it's a special feeling just creating something as well.
It's meaningful.
Yeah, it's meaningful, but it doesn't have how do you say?
You're not doing it because you have to.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking for a particular word. There are no obligations, kind of.
Yeah.
There are no requirements of you, but you can just sit down and create something. It is very therapeutic for me as well, many times. Sometimes not as therapeutic when you like are doing a contest that back in the days lasted for like 2 days, or you could at least sit down and do it during the weekend, and then you had to like speed draw a super high art comic. But that was really fun.
The very first contests were they announced what the theme was, and there's like go post stuff. So basically you had like a couple of hours at most, maybe like 2 or 3 hours to draw a comic and post it in that post, because you have to be the first one to post to collect enough upvotes to win. That's the reason why I won the very first contest. It wasn't because my entry was the best. It's because I was like the second person to actually post my entry.
Did you make the announcement as well?
No, I wasn't a mod back then. I wasn't even an approved submitter.
Yeah.
I just happened to see the post right when it went up, and I immediately started drawing, and like 40 minutes later I posted my entry, like almost before anyone else.
No, but some of those contests were really different as well. I feel like they were like these meme templates, right? Like, this is my country, this is my neighbor, this is my enemy, this is
that was
my
the
dad.
first one. That was the first contest. Yeah.
It's good to see that the contest format has evolved in multiple stages to something that I feel like is much better than what it once was.
Yeah, because not everyone can work under pressure like that. Some people need a couple of days to draw their contest entry, which is like, it's more fair for everyone the way we do it now. But I want to jump back to something that you said before, if we can switch subjects a little bit.
Yeah, no worries. I love tangents, like I said.
Yeah, we've been going on so many of them. No, but one thing that you said before when we talked about topics and how I've drawn a lot of comics that are like critical of Sweden, where you said that Polandball, it's not racist, but it does have a penchant of attracting nationalists. We've talked about this internally as well a lot, both in like the Polandball mod team over like a decade, and in the YouTube channel as well. Whereas like we took a thing that came from Kraut Chan and Chan culture, and that was pretty like hostile and racist, I'm gonna say, like from the start. And we took that and we molded it into this big international inclusive phenomenon. And we have always sort of like had to actively work to keep racists out of the community. Because we do want Polandball to be this inclusive thing. And I think part of that is the reason why I have drawn so many comics that are critical of Sweden, because I want to foster that thing of like, hey, if you want to try this out and you want to do your own comics, start out with doing this. Start out with taking like a huge shit on your own country, because it is inclusive, right? To do it that way. I've said before that it's like, instead of laughing at someone else, I am inviting other people to laugh with me.
Yeah, I can see that. It is sort of a therapy to do that, I feel like.
I think it's fun.
To draw, to ridicule your own country. I'm not sure I've done that too much, but I have definitely done that. I think, when I started out making comics, like I said, that's probably not something that I thought I would be doing too much of. Even though arguably my first comic is also kind of critical of Sweden a little bit. But I don't know, it is, when you get sort of a wider perspective, it is really fun to just not really consider, these ball represent countries, but sometimes I just think of them as, these are different characters in a way that have different tropes or different historic ideas and personalities.
In some ways, they have become cartoon characters. Poland is probably the biggest example.
Yeah.
The character of Poland has just taken on a life of its own that's probably not super closely related to what the country of Poland actually is like nowadays.
That is true. And just like to piggyback off what you said earlier as well, there is still a big discussion, I would feel like, or I feel like there is currently a big discussion around if Polandball comics are racist, or if Polandball as a medium is racist. There are a bunch of people who, still think that it is to some degree. And then you also have to, define racism, which maybe isn't the easiest thing to do. Because, there can be implicit racism in a lot of things that can affect, people on different levels of subconsciousness. But yeah, I would probably be one of those people who would say that I do not think that Polandball is racist. But some Polandball comics can be racist, definitely.
It also depends on who you ask, because we've seen that certain nationalities are way more sensitive than others are.
Yeah.
10 years ago, USA was probably like the worst. Mm-hmm. Whereas like Americans...
They are still up there, I will say.
Yeah, they're still up there. But we made a lot of meta comics back then about how easily offended Americans are, mm-hmm. and how Americans like really, really get angry when you make them the butt of the joke. The Quebecois were also pretty notorious back in the day.
Right.
Today, I'm gonna say that the worst offenders, and I've talked about this before, are Indians and Israelis.
Yeah.
I would say the ones that...
Yeah, sorry.
That you like basically just really go, you're not allowed to joke about us.
Yeah, and that is probably tied really closely to, how nationalistic these peoples are. I say peoples, that doesn't sound very, very nice to say. But there has been for long a really, a nationalistic culture in the United States. And I think that has been, growing a bit in, I feel like in Israel that has always been a big part of their country a little bit. They've kind of had to do that to, that has kind of been an ethos of their country. And also India, they've gotten way more right wing, I would say, with like Modi and people like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like there is probably a nationalist wing kind of growing there as well. And
it's interesting because this comes from both sides of the political spectrum, I would say. And this is something that like stand-up comedians have talked about a lot in the past like 20 years or so, where they're like, the scope of what you're allowed to joke about is so small today that it's so hard to like make a living as a comedian because you're not like allowed to joke about anything. Granted, like if you go back and watch like comedy stuff from the 90s, say popular Swedish stuff. If you go back and look at like, Killinggänget and other Swedish comedy troupes, and look at those like sketches with today's eyes, you're gonna be like, wow, this is homophobic. It's like, oh my god. It's like, and it's not even nuanced. It's just like, oh, the joke is that this person is gay and that's funny. Ha, let's laugh at the gay person. Like, that's the level it's at.
That is pretty crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, but that was like just acceptable back then. No one, like, everyone just praised it. It's like, oh, genius comedy. No one batted an eye at it. Now we look at it differently, and now it's like, this would not be cool today.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Society just sort of like evolving and growing and growing up and maturing in a way. But there is also the case of, like, you know, the criticism toward the left would be that, oh, you're too easily offended when it comes to, like, cultural things or whatever. You're not allowed to joke about anything because then someone's gonna get offended, and if someone gets offended, then it's per definition wrong, right? If someone got offended, that means you did something wrong. It's just like the premise. Meanwhile, on the right, you get these nationalistic wings, which are also sort of like just as hostile toward comedy from other aspects of just like, you're not allowed to joke about us, you're not allowed to joke about our country, you're not allowed to joke about our history or whatever, you're only allowed to joke about other people. So what's weird is you get the left saying you're only allowed to punch up, and you get the right saying you're only allowed to punch down. And then you stand in the middle as a comedian and feel like, oh, okay, so no matter what I do, someone's gonna get pissed at me. And I've talked about that, how, like, I've always seen it as our mission in Polandball to serve as a counterweight for that, and sort of like in both directions. Take it, punching both at the left and at the right, and challenging both of these conventions. We're challenging both the idea that just because someone is offended, you can't joke about it. We're challenging that. We're also challenging the idea that it's somehow wrong or spreads a negative message or whatever to, because they're like, but we're better than them. Why are you joking about us? We're better than them. We should be a shining example for the rest of the world. And I think that, like, you should never be allowed to go uncriticized for so long that you start thinking that your shit doesn't stink.
Yeah, I totally agree. But it is pretty funny also what you said, like, about comedians kind of complaining about it being a hard time joking about certain topics. But I hear that a lot, and you know, comedians get a lot of shit. But I also ask these people
as well.
I also ask these people, like, when was the last time you went to, like, a stand-up comedy show? Because people kind of get away with joking about pretty, like, racy stuff as long as it's funny. We've kind of talked about this before. Like, the rule of funny is one of the, you know, core principles of writing comics and doing comedy, and I feel like that is. I have definitely gotten away with some kind of questionable jokes throughout the years while making Polandball comics. But people kind of like them because they understand that, you know, this is a funny thing to say. And this is, you know, at the end of the day, it's not really like pointing out, or, you know, ridiculing or demeaning a certain nationality or people in a really, like, dehumanizing way. It's all in good fun or good jokes. In general.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And we tell people that in, like, approval requests as well, where that part is lacking. Whereas, like, this isn't funny, the thing you made. And there's another quote from a comedian, it was like Anthony Jeselnik, who said that on, like, a podcast or something, where he was like, if you're just being offensive for the sake of being offensive, that's not hard.
No.
That doesn't take any talent. You have to be funny. If you're just offensive without being funny as well, then you're just a troll, and it's not hard to be a troll.
Yeah, I feel like there is so much of that kind of going on the current right wing. I want to call those people out.
Yeah, go for it.
No,
call them out.
Like, for example, if you look at any one Elon Musk tweet nowadays, I would say that the things that he jokes about that he thinks is funny, it's just things
it's just not funny.
No, it's things that will upset people in general. It's just things that are offensive for being offensive. It's not things that are funny in general. Or maybe, you know, maybe I've become too much of a libcuck to understand these jokes. But I still feel like you can be, you know, you can joke about really sensitive subjects sometimes. You can joke about, you know, nationalities like we do in Polandball. But
yeah,
you can make funny jokes. If you just do it to be edgy, then yeah, it is not funny. As simple as that.
Yeah, and Elon Musk is just a troll. He's not funny.
No, I don't think he's funny.
No.
It is a little. It is very sad because, you know, once upon a time I did look up to Elon Musk. I was like, I think he did cool things, and, you know, Tesla and SpaceX, for example. And he retweeted one of my videos twice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've made, for people who don't know, Doge has become, you know, it's become a word that's associated with a lot of things nowadays. But when a really long time ago, it was probably 2017 or something like that, Dogecoin was kind of coming up as a parody of Bitcoin.
Yes.
And people just, you know, traded it because it was funny. I found out about it through Reddit when someone typed something to me like, Doge tip bought 1 Doge. Like, they gave me 1 Doge. You could like tip on Reddit. And I had no idea. I thought someone was trying to dox me. I thought it was do get IP bot. I thought someone was trying to like get my IP. So I just like kind of fell down this rabbit hole and explored it. And all of this kind of accumulated to me making the r/Dogecoin subreddit had a contest for who could make the kind of promo video for the entire currency. And I submitted a video, and I ended up winning. The video is called D is for Dogecoin, and it has like a soundtrack from a Swedish Bit-pop music group Dunderpatrullen, which I have been a big fan of. And they also ended up naming that song after my video, which was really like honoring for me. But
yeah,
anyway,
I'm looking this up now. Yeah, that was 11
yeah.
years ago. 4 million views on YouTube. Not too shabby.
I remember having a really fun time making that video, and it was all in good vibes. And, you know, Dogecoin was kind of just, people were having fun with it, and it was sort of like a meme. And then later on, it like grew in value, and Elon Musk started like talking a lot about it before he had gone full
mask off.
Yeah, full mask off.
Yeah.
And he retweeted it twice, and that was the most. I'm not sure about the most views, but definitely the most money I ever made in a single day from just his retweet of my video getting views and getting like ad revenue on YouTube. So I thought it was really cool, and, you know, I wouldn't consider myself like a Musk fanboy, but I was, you know, I had good. I saw him in a good light, and it's very sad how much that man has fallen.
Yeah,
honestly.
My brother, he's leasing a Tesla and has been for a couple of years, and he's like, I don't think I'm gonna keep the Tesla.
Yeah, I would feel a little ashamed if I like owned a Tesla. just because like I wonder how people would perceive me. Like, do they think that I'm like because people that are fans of Elon Musk, they are fanatical, or have been at least. They like, you know, follow every step and everything he says.
There was like a tweet a couple of years ago, which I just found really funny, where someone wrote, where it's like, you have to admit that it's at least interesting that every Elon Musk fanboy that you know is like the biggest loser you've ever met in your life.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't think I have many people in my life that are super fanboys anymore, at least. But
well, even if they are, they don't talk about it openly anymore.
No, that's probably true.
Yeah, no, but they talked about that too, of like, oh, we're gonna legalize comedy again. But it's like, it's so disingenuous, because like I said, both the right and the left are like, I consider the most extreme parts of the right and the most extreme parts of the left, I consider both of them to be enemies of comedy. I do believe that comedy cannot coexist with hardline political fundamentalism, regardless if you're on the left or on the right.
No, I think that, you know, that's a big part of kind of liberal ideology. I don't mean like liberal as in, you know,
the American definition.
No, the American definition, sort of as like a
classic
bigger concept.
European liberalism.
Yeah, classic European liberal. No, maybe not. You know, classic liberalism.
Oh, liberal as in like just open, accepting.
Yeah, exactly. Liberal as in open, or you can even say like neoliberalism if you want to as well.
That has a very specific American definition.
That has a specific, but as if you would take it as like the hegemonic, you know, ideology of most
laissez-faire, anything goes.
I think we're getting into specific definitions there, but liberalism in general has, you know, it has an openness to different ideologies existing under its umbrella in different ways. Like a liberal society can allow, unfortunately, Nazis protesting, or you know, communists as well manifesting. Not saying that these two are the same thing in any way, but what I mean is like under communism or under fascism, liberalism and, you know, the other counterpart would not exist. So I feel like you need to be somewhere in between to be able to have the most, the largest amount of creative expression.
Yeah, I mean, I get criticized for this from both ends, obviously, but like I've talked about sort of like my political leanings before in various contexts of like, yeah, I grew up being fairly sort of right-leaning, but over time there's been a couple of things that have just made me have to reevaluate a lot of my stances. And today I'm one of those people who like unironically refers to themselves as an enlightened centrist, right? And if 18-year-old me would have known that like, oh yeah, 20 years from now you're going to be referring to yourself as a centrist, he would have probably been pretty pissed with future me.
Centrism is also a very interesting
people think that it just means nothing. They think there's like, oh, you don't have any convictions, and
like, people kind of also always assume that it's like, you know, if there are two different sides to take, you always have to position yourself in the middle, which I would say that it's definitely not. I feel like, to me, I would sometimes describe myself as a centrist as well. But I would say that, you know, I kind of pick and choose depending on each question where I want to align myself. And sometimes it happens to be like more left-leaning, sometimes it happens to be more right-leaning. But as a whole, you couldn't really, you know, define me as being in one of the two camps, so to speak.
No, same. And for me, it was like, I think I had like two things that were like defining things that sort of shook me and forced me to like stop and really think about like my beliefs. One was, you know, I come from a working class background, right? What would the left refer to me as, like a temporarily embarrassed millionaire or whatever? That's what they say. That's why all the poor people support right-wing stuff, because they're like, oh, one day I'm gonna be rich too, and then this is all gonna benefit me. But
that is definitely a mindset people do have.
That is definitely a mindset. But I grew up with like humble means, and I was able to go to law school and get a legal degree and get a good career and sort of like do this class transition from working class to, I guess, middle class now, because education is free in Sweden. Whereas like if I had been living in a society run according to the things that I propagate and the things that I like, my convictions, then I would be stuck among the poors. I like this path to a better life that I have was made possible through socialism.
Yeah, or at least like social democratic policies.
Yes. And it's like, how can I sit here and deride this and call this evil, call this bad, call this bullshit, call this a waste of government resources and whatever, when I can see how I have directly benefited from it and it has improved my life in such a dramatic way that like everything would be different for me, everything would be worse for me if this didn't exist. Everything would be worse for millions of people if this didn't exist.
No, but
and
that
was difficult for me to reconcile. Took a long time, and the way I reconciled with it was realizing that I have been wrong about some things.
No, that's always very difficult. I want to say that I've had somewhat of a similar experience. I've kind of, when I grew up, I kind of just thought about voting or learned about it as, just vote for what's best for your own interests in many ways. And I kind of grew up in a middle class family, I want to say, classical suburban life. And, if you want to vote, then you kind of, if you imagine that you're going to get a job, then you kind of, you don't like paying taxes. You should kind of vote for, getting lower taxes. That was kind of like the gist of my political, knowledge. But and I was also, brought up a bit more right wing. And I want to say, like, in Sweden, being right wing is far removed from being right wing in, for example, America.
Yes, absolutely not the same thing at all.
Yeah,
even because even our right wing parties, like everyone in the right, everyone's like, yeah, of course we should have free education, of course. No one would question that. Yeah. Of course we should have free healthcare. There's like both the left and the right are like, yeah, you'd be stupid to think anything else.
Yeah, but over time, kind of also realizing what you said, that like so many great things have kind of been achieved through like the Social Democrats in Sweden. They have done a lot to build up the social net that exists in Sweden to help people. I'm not sure if gaining class mobility is the right way to put it, but I think Sweden has been rated as one of the countries where you have the highest chance of succeeding, regardless of where you lie on the economical spectrum.
And to an extent,
I'm not sure it's
hard to become filthy rich in Sweden because of our progressive taxation. Yeah. Whereas like that's what people are saying. It's very doable to become to get to a place where you have a comfortable lifestyle. That is very achievable in Sweden.
Yeah.
Becoming a billionaire is very hard in Sweden.
Yeah. I think a lot of these things have changed a little bit with the more right-wing government, because I think Sweden is one of the countries that have like the most billionaires per capita in like Northern Europe, at least. So I'm not sure how much of all that I've said still holds up. But I think it is funny that, I think this is something that Americans pride themselves for. Like they say that the American dream can exist, people can you can reach really great heights if you live in America, but I think that is somewhat of a lie, or has been historically at least. I think countries that have social security safety nets have in general had it is easier for you to climb regardless of where you lie on the spectrum.
No, I would agree with that. If you look at social mobility, in the US, you have anomalies. You have the one person here and there who does it, and they get lauded as like the shining example of the American dream of like, oh, they did it.
They worked hard.
That's what we should all aspire to do or whatever. Yeah. But it's like, instead of looking at it from an individual perspective, let's look at it from a societal perspective. How many people do this on average? Yeah. What's the percentage of people in this country who actually gets to experience some sort of class mobility? And that number is unfortunately pretty low in the US, I'd say.
Yeah, that is...
Man, we are just good. Continuing glazing Sweden. That's probably gonna be like that's gonna be the title of this podcast. It's gonna be Glazing Sweden. I love it.
It's easy to do. Done it for so many years.
Yeah, wonderful. Man, we have been going on for like an hour and a half now.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have any obligations. So if you want to go on for longer, I can do that as well. If you want to cover more Polandball things, or if you want to end it here as well, it doesn't really matter for me.
No, typically like this has been the format I've aimed for. I mean, I'll try some other times as well. I'm gonna see if like, hey, what if we do a podcast that's a bit longer? What if we do one that's a bit shorter? Yeah. What if we have more guests? What if we have less people in the studio, more people in the studio? Since this is sort of like a reboot of the podcast, and we're still in the trial and error phase of sort of finding out what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, you do have a bit leeway with the entire reboot angle.
Yeah, but there's also a case to be made for leaving people wanting more, and just from this, you and I could just have a chat for an hour and a half without any script, and there's like, this is gonna be so easy for me to edit because there's like no dead air whatsoever. I can just keep almost all of this in. I don't have to change a goddamn thing. So that's wonderful. That's been like, that's a dream for me.
Yeah, how good for you.
You've been a fantastic guest.
No editing needed. Exactly.
That's great. But I do, if we are gonna round it off, I obviously have to do. I'll throw this out for anyone who's a guest on the podcast. Do you have something you want to plug? Do you want to have something you want to promote? Do you have any upcoming projects or anything that you'd like to build some hype for, or just checking out your Polandball comics, checking out your YouTube channel? Anything else going on in your life right now?
No, that's nice. It's like hot ones. Anything you have going on in your life?
Well, yeah. Why not?
No, but you can find my comics on r/Polandball. My username is ZimoNitrome. You can also find me on X. I'm sure that's not really a popular platform these days, but I have the handle Zimo Comics. ZIMO_comics. YouTube as well. I haven't posted much in a while, but ZimoNitrome. I'm trying to, these days I've been getting into, trying to make some games, for example. I'm a programmer by trade. And I'm also making some websites, so I hope that something will come of that soon. You can check out my website that is related to Polandball, that is currently in heavy development, but it's called Polandballworld.com. And it's sort of a interactive map. I'm planning to add some of the maps that's been posted to the subreddit before. And the goal with that is sort of to add different stereotypes to countries so that people can have an easier time making Polandball comics, kind of browsing. Because I do feel like there are so many countries in Polandball comics that are underrepresented, like the entirety of Africa, for example. I think if people just knew more stereotypes about countries, and I say stereotypes, that sounds bad, but stereotypes can just be, a trope of a country, for example, or like an interesting fact, or that, Ghana produces gold. I'm not entirely sure that they do. But things like that, for example.
Commonly known characteristic.
Yeah, exactly. That's maybe a better way of putting it. I'm using the word stereotype still to be a bit more provocative. But I'm trying to build up sort of a database of, different tropes about countries. So go check out polandballworld.com and add some more info for me to display on the website.
That's nice. That sounds like a really, honestly, a valuable tool, because when we have people show up and, want to start making their own Polandball comics, we've always talked about how Polandball has like a very low barrier of entry, just from being MS Paint comics, and it's supposed to look like it was drawn in MS Paint. Our motto used to be like, the shittiness is part of the charm. So people are like, oh, I can't draw the way you do. I can't make things that look that good. And we're like, it's fine. It doesn't have to be. It can look super simple. It's fine. Polandball is for everyone. It's supposed to be for everyone. But another thing that the second most common question is like, how do you funny? How do you write funny jokes? How do you write about countries or whatever? And I typically, my advice to people, and it touches back on what we've said before, Mark Twain, I think, was the one who said this as like writing advice, where he just said, first, write what you know. If you are an aspiring author, start by writing about subjects that you're knowledgeable about, because then you can be genuine. Then you can tell something that feels real. Right. I'm like, I can do jokes about Sweden because I know this country.
Yeah.
I know how Swedes are. I know how I can make funny jokes about Sweden based on my cultural context. If you are from Brazil, you can write stuff about Brazil that it's way funnier than I could write.
Yeah.
Because you know that country way better than I do. So I do tell people, like, hey, start by joking about your own country. Start by making fun of your own country. That's typically the easiest path to becoming funny. But having, like what you're describing here, having a tool like that, even if it's, you know, on a basal level, just giving people a start of just an opening for here's some ways that you can use other countries in your comics. It could be very helpful for artists starting out, and it could also, like you said, which is the main goal, which is to help with making people feel more comfortable with using countries that have so far been very underutilized in comics. That's really cool.
Yeah, because this is sort of what I have done throughout the years. I've kind of built a database in my head about, you know, info about countries, history, stereotypes, and then it becomes much more easier to like think of funny jokes to write in comics.
Yeah. All right, so Polandballworld.com.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do everything that you've mentioned, your Reddit comics and your YouTube channel and your X account and this. I'm gonna link all of those socials in the description of the video as well, so people can find them easily, just one click away.
Very appreciative. And yeah, it would be fun to probably talk a bit more some other time about maybe, you know, favorite comics and tips and tricks for drawing comics. Maybe in another episode.
Dude, definitely. That's why I said, you know, leave them wanting more. I feel like you and I could probably sit and talk for like another 2 hours. But why waste that now when that just means that I can bring you on as a podcast guest again sometime in the future?
Spoken like a true YouTuber content brain. No, but I agree.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we're gonna wrap up there. That feels like a nice spot to do it on. So thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
ZimoNitrome. No, you've been great. It has been fun. I hope people enjoyed listening to it. And that's a wrap. That's a wrap for another installment of the Polandball podcast. So with that being said, we're gonna say our goodbyes, and then we'll see you again some other time for something completely different.
See you later, guys. Bye.
Woo!